like I said, the CEO of Resume Deli, and they're a partner of ours at FlexJobs, so you can utilize some discounts and resources with them. He's also a nationally recognized expert on resume development with more than 15 years as a career consultant and content developer. His resume writing advice has been featured by the New York Times, CBS This Morning, Newsday, and Blog Talk Radio. And he is also the co-author of Crane's Guide to Writing an Effective Resume. So he's a wonderful, wonderful expert on what we're going to go over today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand over the screen to him, and we'll go ahead and get the presentation started. Welcome, Joseph.
Hey, thanks, Jess, and thanks, everyone, for participating today. Some of you may have participated in some of our other webinars that we've done together, FlexJobs and Resume Deli. We ran a couple earlier this year, one on resume writing, one on cover letter writing, and now we're doing LinkedIn today, obviously, and later in the year, in November, we're going to have a day where we're going to be covering interview skills. And while these are kind of basic general topics in the area of career development and career management, we aim to present topics in these areas that are a little offbeat, a little more specific than you might typically hear, and that's just so that you don't necessarily hear the same old stuff over and over again from a variety of different sources. So point is, if you have questions as we proceed, as Jess said, please pose them, and we'll get to them, if not during the heart of the presentation, then toward the end I'm going to leave about 15 minutes so we can do Q&A, because I want to know obviously what questions you have and do my best to answer those. So I just want to check, Jess, are you able to see my screen okay?
I am, yes.
Okay. Then we're going to get started. So a couple of things about LinkedIn. I'm sure many of you have used LinkedIn, you have LinkedIn accounts, but it's important to kind of keep a couple of basic things in mind. You know, LinkedIn it's intended for professionals, and just to cut right to the chase. You know, what I want you to keep in mind as you're developing your profile and working on LinkedIn and making connections there through that social network is, you know, your picture, your photo, all of your content, you know, needs to be, you know, as professional, as well written, as sharp, as relevant to your target reader, as is your resume and your cover letter. There's a kind of a common concept, if you will, that social media, you know, you can kind of let it all hang out and take a load off, and that is the case in large part with social networks like Facebook and Twitter. But where LinkedIn is concerned, you know, my advice is you don't know who's looking at your profile necessarily in the moment, and you want to make sure that yours remains as, you know, as professional as your other career documents. So let's keep that in mind. The next thing, and maybe the most important thing you might walk away with here today, is to always think of LinkedIn. It's not just a place for you to post your resume and walk away. As a matter of fact, doing so can potentially be damaging when you create a social presence, a social media presence, and you don't attend to it, and you don't you know, pay attention to it and use it and participate. It kind of makes you or your profile look, how do I say, kind of washed up, or old news, or, you know, anything that's online that's not up to date, whether that's a website, whether that's a blog, whether that's a social network. You know, you know what that's like from if you're a visitor to someone's site and their content is out of date. It's the same with your profile. So one way to stay, you know, up to date, one way to keep your profile fresh, is to make connections and participate on LinkedIn in a number of different ways that we're going to talk about today. You know, and one of those is to network. So this means, again, making contacts, but not just individual contacts. On LinkedIn, you can join and participate in groups, in what we call influencing circles that are based around different topics of interest, professional interest. We're going to talk about that today as well. But the main drive here, the main point that I want to get across is, LinkedIn is a place to be active. Okay. The little bit about what I'll call positive LinkedIn philosophy. Two things. When you get on LinkedIn, from the moment you join it and post a profile, to all of your activity on LinkedIn, you want to make sure that you have a clear purpose. Okay, so you don't want to post a profile just to have one, because you're supposed to have one as a job seeker or as a professional. I'm not going to say that that thinking is entirely wrong, meaning it is important that you be there. It is important that you have a presence, but beyond that, you want to know why you're doing that, because that's going to filter down or trickle down to everyone who looks at your profile, be that other professionals, colleagues of yours in your current place of employment, hiring managers and recruiters who are potentially looking for candidates to fill a particular position. And there's different ways to have that clear purpose. One is to create a profile that really speaks loud and clear to your target, and this is something that I think many, Resume Deli has worked with FlexJobs for a long time now. We've worked with a lot of FlexJobs members, and one of the trends that we see among you is not necessarily having 100% focus on what it is that you want to do next. That's not a strike against you. That description applies to a lot of different job seekers and professionals who have multiple interests and who've had multiple career paths, sometimes simultaneously. But on LinkedIn, it's more challenging to tell your story when you've had that type of a mixed background. Where resumes are concerned, you can have multiple resumes, and Resume Deli is always preaching your resume needs to be as focused and as relevant to your target audience as possible, which basically boils down to having some slightly different versions of your resume ready to go, depending on what kind of an opportunity you're pursuing. Where LinkedIn is concerned, it's much more difficult to do that because you typically have a single profile, and that single profile has to, it either has to cover all bases, which is where the challenge comes in, or it has to cover some bases and do it well. But whoever's coming to your profile, whoever's looking at whatever updates you're adding to your profile, needs to walk away thinking this person has a clear direction in their career, they know what they want, because that's going to help them to help you. I know someone I can connect them with, or I know a group they'd be interested in, or I know a professional meeting that's taking place that I'm going to refer them to because I know they're going to get a lot out of it. When you kind of make your LinkedIn profile a catch-all, it makes it very difficult for others to kind of grab on to what the message that you're trying to communicate and in turn help you. So having a clear purpose, that's one thing. Giving advice and giving help, that's another really important part of the LinkedIn philosophy. So many people, when they start a profile on LinkedIn and start getting involved, their immediate reaction is, why is anyone going to want to help me? Why would someone want to either give me a job offer or connect me with somebody else? Or the big question is, why would anybody want to connect with me? And so they hesitate about building their network and extending invitations to others because they think it's not going to be well received on the other end. And there's some truth in that. People are busy. People don't necessarily want to make a brand new contact unless they know what's going on? Like what's in it for them? Why should they make a new contact in you or with you? Part of that harkens back to what I said before about if you have a clear purpose, the person who you send a LinkedIn invitation to will get it, right? They'll see the connection once they glance at your profile. But in addition to that, what many fail to do on LinkedIn is to, or in any networking relationship for that matter, is to start off by giving as opposed to taking. So there might be someone who you want to connect with, or a current connection on LinkedIn, and you might recommend to them something that they should read or a video that they should see. You might recommend to them somebody who they should connect with because you know that it's going to help them in their professional endeavors. You might refer a job candidate, particularly if you yourself, for whatever reason, are not a good fit. If someone's looking to hire someone on LinkedIn and you know someone who would be a good candidate, someone they should probably interview, you can put them in touch. That's helping a number of different contacts at the same time. So this, you can, the last item on this slide, you can volunteer your expertise. So in other words, if you get a sense that someone needs help in a particular area, someone may be advertising that they need help in an area, but they may not be looking to hire someone, or maybe they are and you're gainfully employed and you don't want to apply for that job, but still you might reach out, introduce yourself, and offer some kind of expertise that you have. That's just a great way to start off a relationship on LinkedIn or anywhere for that matter. So giving is, and you build a reputation on a platform like LinkedIn as someone who gives and not only takes, and that's how you really build out a strong, powerful network. So before I move on to the next slide, I know everyone's on mute at the moment, but I just want to take a breather and ask Jess if there's any questions that she thinks we should tackle, any questions that might have come in to this point.
Sure. We have a question. How much time do you estimate one would have to spend to maintain their profile?
To maintain the sort of nuts and bolts of your profile, meaning like, those sections that kind of double on your resume, your experience and your education and so on, not much time at all. Like you want to really give a few hours probably to, really build, based on a strong resume, you can build a strong LinkedIn profile. So that's time up front. But in terms of maintenance, like there are updates that you can add to LinkedIn, and this is the networking component that takes your profile and your experience on LinkedIn to a different level, to a higher level. So, I would, things you might add to your profile in terms of updates are, an event that you attended, and you might share a link to a synopsis of it, or a great article that you read. You might write a couple of thoughts short about, why this article was strong and what it means to you and maybe people in your industry, and send out that link. These are just examples. Or some service that you benefited from and it was helpful, and again it's relevant to other people in your industry, etc. So, but this could be like 10 minutes a day on average would be, for some, a lot, and it might not sound like much, but it adds up. But that's time spent updating your profile, and there are days when you won't touch your profile, and there's days when you'll spend a little bit more time than that. But the idea is to get people coming to your profile and saying, okay, here's somebody who's spending some time, giving back to the, giving to the LinkedIn community. Not only that, but actually, keeping involved in their career. They're up to date. They're learning new skills. They're learning new information. They're reading about trends. Not only sharing it, but taking it in. So, were I ever to deal with this person on any professional level, I'm going to feel good about it because I know they know what's happening. Another way that you'll add to your profile or your presence on LinkedIn is participating in groups, and we will talk more about that, but basically joining professional associations that are on LinkedIn, and maybe adding to that conversation. So there might be a group of people discussing a topic that's relevant to people in your line of work, and you'll chime in with your own 2 cents. And also then kind of go, part of the time involved in LinkedIn is, like any social network, is going back, looking to see if there's comments. You can get automated emails that will tell you as much, so that takes less time. But when you do get an email that says, hey, someone commented on a string that you've already commented on or that you've shown interest in, then you'll want to go in and read that and perhaps comment something else, kind of keep the conversation alive and going. So these are the things that take time, but truthfully, once you get going, 10 minutes a day is I think a fair amount, especially if you have other other things that you're doing. Anything else, Jess?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of a follow-up to that question was, do you suggest setting up networking time weekly, maybe about an hour per week? And they also said that this is a great suggestion, as they've never thought of giving to LinkedIn. So
yeah, well, sure. And I think when you get started, if social networking is something you've done, be it on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, if it's something that you've already kind of a skill you have under your belt, then, well, actually you'll probably already kind of have a sense of the timing and what it's like. But so I'm assuming whoever asked that question, it's new to them. And I would probably then allot a little bit more time, to get going. You kind of get the feel of it as you go. It really is a lot like riding a bicycle. So maybe 20, 30 minutes a day or every other day to get started. And these are rough estimates, but you'll kind of see as you get going, like you'll write posts a little bit faster, you'll read them a little bit faster. You'll get a sense, okay, this group, this professional group that I joined on LinkedIn, they're producing some really valuable information, and I'm going to go check them out once a day. But this other one, people are a little more, that's the participation isn't quite as robust. So I know I'm going to change my settings on LinkedIn so I only get a synopsis once a week about what's going on there, and I'll go in once a week, spend 15 minutes, and make my presence known. And I just want to add one thing, which is, and this is really important. I'm not saying you need to go in every day and write something on LinkedIn, because if you start to write, for lack of a better word, forgive me, crap, just to write and just to be involved, people will sniff that out too. And the people who will sniff that out first are the people who really are adding value to the conversations and paying attention. So you don't feel compelled like, oh, I don't have anything smart to say here, or how am I going to participate in this group right now, or how am I going to update my profile? That's less important than is really taking in what's happening in a conversation string and adding something of value that people will say, okay, this person really gets it, and they're at least very, they're trying to add something of value to the conversation. That's much more important. Okay, so unless there's something else that's pressing, I think we'll move on. Does that sound good, Jess?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. So your profile. Question we get all the time is, well, I have a resume. Should I just copy and paste my whole resume onto my profile? Because that would be easiest. And I've spent all this time and energy on my resume, so I want people to see it everywhere. LinkedIn is partially, it's just the nature of the beast. You don't want the content to be completely repetitive from your resume. It should complement your resume. In other words, you shouldn't have a bunch of stuff on your LinkedIn profile that's not on your resume in one way, shape, or form, and on your, or in your cover letter, because there will be those recruiters and hiring managers who do look across all three of those documents, and if they see contrasting information or something that makes them scratch their head, like what's the same person, and and this is what happens when and this is one of the challenges that people face who have multiple career paths going on. It's like you really need to keep on top of your documents and make sure that you're presenting one solid story. Now, That said, a LinkedIn profile is one of the better vehicles, if you take your time with it, to really tell that single story and bring it together, and kind of explain in the summary section of your profile. And we're going to look at a summary in a couple of slides from here, like how you can tell in your summary section a story about, well, what was my trajectory, right? Like what's my history been, and so how did I get from point A to point B to point C? There's a knack to telling that story in a way that doesn't make someone go, well, this person's all over the map. That's not the impact that you want to have. The impact you want to have is, oh, I get it. This person started here, and then it was a logical move. They moved to here, then they had this experience, and it made them move to point C, to here. That's also that's the sort of concept behind telling. I'm sure you've heard of a professional pitch or an elevator pitch, right? That's the same knack or the same artistry to doing that. A summary on a resume does that as well, but LinkedIn, because of its nature, it's you can be a little less formal in terms of how you present your information. So you can use slightly more familiar language. You can use pronouns. You can talk about I and my, whereas on a resume we typically don't do that. We talk more third person. So that's a couple of things I want to get across. Less is more on a LinkedIn profile. Partially because it's an online platform, and just like on a resume, we typically, with few exceptions, we try to stay to 2 pages in length. On a LinkedIn profile, you don't want to force someone to scroll too much. Yet you do want to continue to give relevant accomplishments and provide some meaningful data as part of those accomplishments, so that people see you've done some stuff that's different than everyone else in your industry, have some specific achievements to talk about. You can, moving on, you can create bulleted content, bulleted statements on LinkedIn. I tend to think in most cases it starts to look sloppy. It's just a matter of what LinkedIn's functionality. And so on LinkedIn, I'd say 95% of the time when I help someone build a profile, I try to avoid bullet points entirely, and talk in short, smart sentences, and that seems to work pretty well. And your photo, there's not too much to say about this, but I just wanted to bring it up. I guess the big thing is, you should try to have one. Not so much, I think most people who have one figure out that it needs to be professional. Professional doesn't necessarily mean suit and tie, it just means not goofy or goofing around. Sorry, I don't mean to tell you things you probably already know, but the main question is, like, should I have a photo? A lot of people decide not to. And I think it really can make a positive impact to have one, because it just, for the obvious reasons, it lets someone, relate to you and kind of, put a name to all the content that you have on your website. It just, on your LinkedIn profile rather, it brings life to it. Okay, so I mentioned that we were going to look at a summary, and here's a summary for Tim Haft. Tim, speaking of people with multiple career tracks, Tim Haft is currently president of Punk Rope, but he's actually one of the original founders of Resume Deli, and he's been a Resume Deli client many times over. And if you look at his profile here, I'm not going to read it out loud to you, but it's a good example of, you can almost hear him talking to you, in my opinion. It's very personal, it's very well written, it's targeted, has a lot of good information in here, and you kind of see not only where he's coming from and what he does, but there's a little bit of his personal or professional vision in here toward the end. And this is something that I feel one can connect to. Now, I say in every webinar that I run here with FlexJobs, I always end up saying this in one way, shape, or form, which is there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I think this is a strong summary. It's not the only way to create a professional summary. If you look at my own LinkedIn profile, you'll see actually a different tact. And it's very rare that Resume Deli will say, or I'll say, there's only one way to do this and do it this way, or it's not going to work. Your summary has to reflect your content, for one. So your content has to, you need to write in a way that complements what it is you have to say. It also needs to complement, I think, who you are. So if if you write a summary like Tim's here, and it's not doesn't really reflect your personality, and you step into a job interview with someone who's just read your profile, your summary on LinkedIn, and the way you're talking and the way you're describing yourself doesn't match up with this, they might sense that, and feel like, oh, did someone else write your profile for you, or did someone else write your LinkedIn profile? And if they did, they did it in a way that doesn't doesn't sound like you. It needs to sound like you. Yeah. Actually, let me step back one slide. Any questions around the profile or around the summary that have come up that we should tackle?
One of the questions was, would you recommend a story-like approach to explain multiple careers?
I would if, and this is kind of what I was talking about before, the multiple careers kind of is going to resonate, if it's going to resonate with the person hearing or reading your story. So back to Tim's profile here, and part of the reason why I decided to talk about his is because, as mentioned, he has a background in career services. Tim has written books about resume development. You don't see that here in his summary because about 10 years ago or 8 years ago, Tim decided, you know what, I'm going to have another love, which is fitness. It's always been my love, and I'm going to pursue it. And he decided that, you know what, for most audiences, it doesn't make sense, or it's not necessary for his reader to know about that past career. That's him. For you, telling your reader about your prior careers may be almost like a prerequisite in order for them to understand who you are today. If it helps you to tell your story, if it makes your story more impressive, if it makes your story more memorable, if it makes your story more likable to your target reader, those are great reasons to, yes, do that. And a summary is the right place to do that, at least as far as LinkedIn is concerned. But you don't want them to feel like, whoa, this person they're here, then they're there, then they're there. If you're going to tell that story, you're going to need to tell it well, obviously. Anything else, or should we move on now, do you think?
I think we can move on.
Let's do it. Okay. So making connections on LinkedIn. I mentioned earlier connecting with a purpose and writing a personalized note. So this is huge, okay? When you connect with someone new on LinkedIn, there's a prefabricated message, which I don't even know what it is. It's something like, hey, thought we should connect on. It's not even that cool. It's like I want to be your connection on LinkedIn. It's, can we connect? And you always have the option to overwrite that and write a more personalized message. Do that. That's your first opportunity to personalize the experience on LinkedIn, to show that there's an actual reason why you're writing to that particular person or trying to connect with that particular individual. And you should take advantage of that, because there are, powerful people, let's call them, on LinkedIn who get multiple invitations on a daily basis, and they accept some and they reject some. You may have met them a week ago at a networking event, but they may not remember, and that may not be because you're not engaging. It may be because they've gotten 100 other invitations in the meantime, and they're just a busy person. So the best thing you can do is take that initial invite text and write a short, clear message. You're limited by how many characters you can use anyway, but it should be where you know them from, or who might have introduced you in the past, or where you met them recently. Keep it short sentences. Ask, maybe even tell them why you'd like to connect, as opposed to, hey, I just thought it'd be good if we connected here. What is it that either you want to offer them, or what you think you might be able to help them with, or vice versa. What kind of information you think they might be able to help you, and how much you'd appreciate that. But try to get that into that initial contact information. I get invitations often, sometimes from former Resume Deli clients, sometimes from other professionals, and if I can't figure it out, from their name, if their name doesn't ring a bell, and if they've given me that generic LinkedIn message, I will, 50% of the time I'll just put it on the back burner and maybe come back to it at another time. Or I might write them back and say something to the effect of, got your invitation, thanks. Before I accept, I'm hoping you can refresh my memory as to where it is we know each other from, or from why it is you're writing to me. And I do that not to be a jerk or not to give that person a hard time, but because I look at LinkedIn as, I have several hundred contacts, and these are contacts who I've, tried to build thoughtfully, who I genuinely want to help, and who I want them to be able to help me in my professional pursuits. And I'm not going to bring someone into my network who I can't trust on some level, or don't know about on some level, and sort of expose my entire network to them. That's my logic for not accepting every invitation that comes my way. And I hope that my contacts, have a similar philosophy or thought process when they're getting invitations, that they're not accepting them willy-nilly. The third bullet point on this slide is be patient with new contacts. So, you might write that customized note that I just talked about and not hear anything back for a few weeks, and you might really want to connect with them for a variety of reasons. So try to be patient. There's a million reasons why someone might not write back right away. I'd give them at least 2 weeks before you follow up. LinkedIn is going to follow up for you anyway. It'll send reminders saying, hey, you got an invitation from Jess at FlexJobs. You haven't responded to it yet. What do you want to do? So they'll get reminders. You don't have to be right on top of them. But on the flip side, the last bullet point here, you do want to do your best to accept invitations in a timely manner. It is a courteous thing to do. Not everyone's going to do it, but you can. Okay. Let's move on right now. LinkedIn. So if you have questions about connecting on LinkedIn, maybe hang on to those. We'll open it up for questions again in a couple of minutes. So LinkedIn for job search. It really is a special place to conduct a job search, but again, by the nature of what LinkedIn is, that you have all these contacts and you can utilize them to help your search and to help others search on LinkedIn. You can search by company, by contact. It's one of the beautiful things I think you can do with LinkedIn is, and it's not very complex. If there's a company that you're interested in, hey, I might like to work for them or intern for them, or you can find, who do you know who has a presence on LinkedIn, who's already working for that company, or who is an alumnus of that company, who has previously worked for that company. And you may not know someone immediately. In other words, they may not be in what LinkedIn calls your first degree of contacts, but you might see that your friend Mary has a friend Bill who's worked for the company that you'd like to work for. And so you can use LinkedIn's interface to get in touch with Mary and say, hey Mary, I see you have a contact Bill. I don't know Bill, but you do, and put me in touch with Bill, because could you make that introduction, because I think he can help me out a little bit. I'd like to work for the company where he worked 3 years ago. It can be as disjointed as that. LinkedIn likes to work out to the third degree of contact. So, Mary, Mary knows Bill, Bill knows Steve. And you can reach out to Steve, and Steve doesn't know you from a hole in the wall, but because of the because of the contact tree, the network tree that I just talked about, there's some reason for that third degree contact to help you. And this is the kind of the beauty of LinkedIn, is taking advantage of who knows who. So that's one amazing part of LinkedIn. I find, and I can't tell you right now, there are analytics that account for what I'm about to say, but for not for my own job search, but just to kind of stay plugged into what all of Resume Deli's clients are dealing with. I run current job searches and have, I get emails on a daily basis from Monster, from Career Builder, from LinkedIn, from the ladders, etc. Just so I like to kind of know what my clients are looking at and dealing with. I have a number of different job searches that well represent what my clients are searching for. And without question, the best results come back from LinkedIn on a regular basis from all of those major job search avenues. And I don't, just to be clear, Resume Deli has zero relationship with LinkedIn. It doesn't benefit me in any way, shape, or form for you to like LinkedIn. Nor does it benefit me if I tell you I like Career Builder or Monster.com, which I'm not saying I do at the moment, but I do find LinkedIn to be exceptionally helpful in the job search area. So signing up to receive job postings, this works a lot like it does on a lot of other sites where you can set your preferences and get a daily or weekly brief. There are ways to write directly to hiring managers on LinkedIn, and we're going to talk about some kind of souped up, LinkedIn is free for its sort of primary tier of services, but then you can join what's called, IN, and for a fee, you can get some additional services. I'm going to talk about that in a couple of moments, like right now. So here's Sarah. Sarah is the CEO and founder of FlexJobs. Here's I cut out a piece of her LinkedIn profile just as an example, and you can see where the red arrow is pointing. She belongs to LinkedIn. She is an IN member, as am I. And that's what you see on someone's profile when they are in. Wow, it sounds kind of pretentious when I say it that way, but that's what it looks like. And so here, LinkedIn for job search, LinkedIn Premium is what they call it. And these are some of the benefits. You get to see who's been looking at your profile, which can be an enormous help, because you see recruiters who are looking at you. You see company representatives who are looking at you. You get a sense of people in your own company where you might be working, who's looking at you. That could tell you information about things like, well, who's looking to start a job search, who's thinking that you're a valuable person within the company. There could be a million reasons why they're looking at your profile. These are some of them. That can be really telling information. That's data that you want to have. You can see the full profiles of people in your network out to that third degree without being a LinkedIn Premium member. You can only see partial profiles out to the third degree. Joining LinkedIn Premium, and again, it does cost money to do this. There's different tiers of service, and you can see all this on LinkedIn. It makes it a little easier to research contacts. As mentioned on the previous slide, you can send direct messages to anyone on LinkedIn, whereas without being a LinkedIn Premium member, you can typically only do that to your contacts. So that really opens things up for you and lets you write to someone who you may not know directly. Different tiers of LinkedIn Premium actually guarantee you'll get a response when you write to someone on LinkedIn, which is a cool benefit. And you can conduct more advanced searches for jobs and for people when you're a LinkedIn Premium member. So these are just some reasons to think about. I would say if you're in the heat of a job search and you have the extra income to spare, it can be a really good investment in your job search to join LinkedIn Premium. And I don't want to misspeak, and I should have looked before this, but I think it starts off somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 or $20 a month, I think, and then it gets to be, it's the higher tier services obviously cost a little bit more. Okay, let's take a quick break. Jess, any good questions that we should talk to?
Yes, we do. How does one deal with invitations from their own management or employer?
Yeah, that's a good one. It's difficult to not accept those. It's a really good reason to keep your profile strong and focused. But there may be times when you have something on your profile that you may. Case in point, if you have multiple different jobs at the same time, which is nothing out of the ordinary for a FlexJobs member, who has multiple part-time positions. You can choose on LinkedIn which one you put first or second when you have multiple jobs that are, say, you have 2011 to present and 2012 to present. You can rejigger those in terms of the order, and you could potentially offend one of those employers if they come to your profile and theirs isn't first, or they might think, wow, I thought that this was their primary source of income, or this was their main gig. So it's a delicate balancing act there. I don't want to go into too much more detail because I know I have a couple of things else I want to cover. Let's hang on to the remainder of the questions now until we get through the deck, and I'm going to move a little more quickly now. I just want. What time do you have, Jess? I apologize.
We're 47 minutes in, so you've
Yeah.
got a little over 10.
Yeah, let's I'm going to move along a little bit. Some best practices for networking, and I'll try not to be repetitive if I've talked about this already. So we're going to tell people what we're up to. That's right on your profile. There's a for status updates. We talked about how we'll do that. You want to create updates that invite questions and comments. So don't be afraid for people to challenge you. Don't be afraid to comment on someone else's post. You don't want to offend anybody, and you don't want to be overly aggressive, but it's okay to disagree. It's okay to ask questions and try to get answers from people. The idea is to try to create a conversation, not to put a period at the end of everything you write that nobody feels they can write back. I call that the thread ender. You don't want to be the thread ender on a topic unless you really are the voice of authority on something. Comment on other people's posts. We talked about that. In addition to connecting with other people on LinkedIn, you can, as I mentioned, join groups. You can follow companies. So companies a company representative will talk about, what a company is doing, what their goals are, what projects they're working on, and if you are interested in what a company is doing, that's where you'll follow them. It's a great source of company news. Influencers are, people who are really at the top of their game. These are people who, we're talking about Warren Buffett. We're talking about the CEOs of, companies that, these are people who are writing books, and you're going to see on talk shows and so on and so forth, front page New York Times, Huffington Post headlines. So you can follow them on LinkedIn and see what they're talking about there. And channels are more, topic-based areas that you can follow. Again, the purpose of following is not just to say that you do, but because you actually think you're going to get something out of it that's helpful for your profession, for your career, or you think you have something smart to add to the conversation. Groups. You're only going to join groups that really make sense for you. It's easy to get overwhelmed on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's going to say, hey, I see you're interested in this group. Well, why don't you join these other 10 groups? And don't just do it because LinkedIn suggests that you do it. I would choose the ones that really seem to make sense to you. Follow the conversations a little bit, and then decide if it's somewhere you need to be. I'm just looking at my bullet points here. You can attend some online events on LinkedIn, kind of like this one. You can, I think I've covered everything here. Endorsements and recommendations. Okay, this is a chunk of my profile that I've cut out, for example, here. Recommendations are what you imagine them to be. People are writing prose. Hey, Joseph Terach is a good career counselor, and he helped me do this and that, and he rewrote my resume. I recommend you use him. That's a recommendation. You want to gather those, and you typically gather them per place you've worked. That's how they get organized on LinkedIn. So I'll have a set of recommendations for people who've worked with me through Resume Deli. And through other places where I've worked in the past. So endorsements are something a little bit different. Endorsements are what you're seeing in the red box here. For those of you who've used LinkedIn, this is basically just people who say, there are 20 people in my network who've said, yes, check off a checkbox. Joseph knows about marketing and communications. And 14 people have said, yes, Joseph knows about social media. But there's nothing more to it than that. So it's very easy to give out endorsements, and it's very easy, relatively easy to get them. And people start to wonder, wow, does this mean anything? Because everyone's endorsing everybody at this point. It's kind of like liking on Facebook if you use Facebook, right? If you like something, do you really know about it? Why do you like it? Have you really experienced it? Or are you just clicking the like box because someone asked you to? That's kind of what endorsements are like. But that said, it's important to get them from your first degree contacts, and it's important to get them in general because the opposite of getting them is not getting them. So the opposite of having 20 endorsements or 10 endorsements or 5 endorsements is not having any. And in the land of social media, you need those likes, you need those endorsements because everyone has them. So that's and you will get them, by the way. So just something to keep in mind, because you'll start to hear about endorsements as you use LinkedIn, and you'll go, what is this? This seems really bogus. And I'm here to say, yes, it's bogus, but you need to do it, and it's easy. I've talked about some of this already, so I want to soon open back up to Q&A. Some other considerations for FlexJobs. Dates are flexible on LinkedIn. As I said, you can reorder your experiences. You can choose to include months and years when you're talking about a place you've worked, or you can just use years. You can reorder simultaneously held positions. I keep saying it, but that's one of the most helpful things on in terms of how LinkedIn is set up for FlexJobs people. If you are interested in telecommuting, this goes for your resume, this goes for your cover letter, this goes for your LinkedIn profile. Let people know about it. You might put it, if it's something that's really important to you, it should probably be in your summary. It should probably be in the individual job listings in your profile, so that people know, I want to work from home 50% of the time or 25% of the time. But you should do more than tell them that you can do it or want to do it. You should tell them specifically when you've done it and how well you've done it. So what did you accomplish working from home? That's what's going to separate you from people who do what's at the bottom half of this slide, which is just saying, hey, I want to work from home, or I work well from home, or I telecommute, I can work remotely, all these buzzwords. It's not so much about that you want to do it. It's show me that you can get the job done while doing it. That's the thing. And then before we go to Q&A, just mentioned earlier in the webinar, everyone who's here today will save 10% at Resume Deli using the coupon code WEBINAR if you decide to work with us now through Halloween, now through October 31st. And then if you're a FlexJobs member, you'll save 20% if you use coupon code FlexJobs at our website. And that's anytime, no expiration on that. Our next seminar is going to be on November 12th. That's going to be on interviewing. Resume Deli has a pretty intense mock interview service that some of you may be interested in, where we do some role play. You give us a job description, we create an interview or interviews built around that job description, and we're pretty hard on you, but with a purpose. So that's the end of the webinar. That's the end of my slides, I should say. I'm here till a little bit past the hour if anyone wants to stay on, and we can do more Q&A.
Okay, so I've got a couple of questions for you. The first one is, do you recommend posting projects that you have worked on or are working on your profile?
Projects, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Yeah. Projects is one of these optional sections on a LinkedIn profile. It's by, parenthetically, it's also an optional section on a resume. And I would suggest, like most things, if the project is A, relevant, sorry, let me repeat that, not irrelevant, A, comma, relevant, and B, relatively recent, then yes, I would include it. And I would include a little bit of detail about it. I wouldn't go overboard. But, like everything else, the question is this, if my target reader or target employer reads about this project, is it going to make them more or less likely to bring me in for an interview to talk about a job opportunity, or is it going to make them more or less likely to want to talk to me about my expertise in this area, to make me a resource for them? Is it going to make them think of me as a subject matter expert in the area that I want them to think about me in, or is it going to have them think, whoa, this is off base, this doesn't really jive with the rest of this person's profile? So relevance is number one.
Okay, wonderful. And then can you address the proliferation of malicious fake LinkedIn invitations? Some of them even appear to be crafted to match my profile. So do you have any advice on how to vet those?
Yeah, don't accept them. Kind of what I talked about before. Write have a short note. It could be a boilerplate message. You have to craft it from scratch each time. Copy and paste it. Reply to it. Remind me who you are. Where not who you are, where we know each other from, please, before I accept. And chances are you're not going to hear back. And so after a month of waiting, let it sit there in your invites, and then I would delete it, or not worry about it again. That's how you do that. I've actually, honestly, in my own experience, I got an invitation from somebody on LinkedIn. This was in my earlier days of using LinkedIn, and this was a thought leader in the career space. It's nobody I knew about, and I wrote back what I thought was a very professional response to the LinkedIn invitation saying, could you please let me know a little bit more before I accept? And this person said, well, if you don't know who I am, then I no longer want to link up with you. And so, was I hurt by that, or did I mind that? Truthfully, getting that response even from someone who's advanced in their career, to me that's very unprofessional, and I was kind of happy to be done with that person. And as my own reputation developed in this field, I made sure, and I didn't want to cross paths with that person anymore. And and I wouldn't, if they sent me an invitation now, I wouldn't accept it. But that's me. You have to decide, for yourself how far you want to go with stuff like that.
That's great. So we're going to go ahead and get wrapping up here because we have about a minute left. But we do have a great question, which is, how can people reach out to you to have you review their LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, sure. My direct email, let me, I assume you have the coupon codes here. Let me quickly head back to the first slide, and there's my, oh no, I don't have my email. Let me tell you my email. It's J, and then my last name, Terach, @resumedeli.com. That's one way to get in touch if you have questions. You can also go to the resumedeli.com website, and you can reach out that way through the Contact Us form if you have a question. You can obviously also look at our resume and cover letter and LinkedIn profile development services there. if you want to learn a little bit more before writing, or you're welcome to write me directly. I'm happy to talk to anyone who's been on this webinar for sure.
All right, wonderful. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So if people have questions, again, you can go to resumedeli.com. You can also go to flexjobs.com, and we will have the recording of this webinar on the blog probably first thing tomorrow. So I just want to thank you again, Joseph, for giving us all of that information, and thank you everyone for attending.
Sure.
And we really wish you all the best of luck in job searches and careers.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
If I could add one last thing, assuming this is okay with you, if people do end up posing additional questions, or if there were just additional questions that we didn't get to today, if you want to share those with me, we can create some kind of a synopsis, written piece that, whether it's a blog post or something, that people can get their questions answered. I know I ran long, so I have a tendency to do that. I apologize.
Not a problem. No, that's fine. I would be more than happy. So, if you want to email me if you receive any, and I can definitely email you. If people who are on the webinar have questions, you're welcome to email us directly at feedback@flexjobs.com. So we would be happy to get information out to everybody and keep the connection between Resume Deli and FlexJobs members alive. So.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks, Jess.
Absolutely. You guys all have a great day.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.